During the brutal winters of World War II, the most feared killer on the battlefield wasn't always the bullet. It was the cold. In the frozen hell of Stalingrad, Karelia, and the Ardennes, temperatures plunged below 40 degrees Celsius. Men didn't just shiver, they froze in place. Boots turned to stone. Rifle bolts locked solid. At dawn, medics walked through trenches to find soldiers with blackened toes and feet swollen from frostbite. For those men, the war against the cold was a war for their own bodies. And yet, amid that misery, a few soldiers found a way to fight back. Not with weapons, but with ingenuity. Their discovery quietly saved thousands. It became known as the boot liner trick. Frostbite was one of the most common injuries of the entire war. On the Eastern Front alone, the German 6th Army reported over 100,000 frostbite casualties before the Soviet counterattack even began. A soldier who lost his toes lost everything: his mobility, his morale, his life expectancy. A frostbitten foot was often an amputated one. But the cruel truth was this: frostbite didn't strike because of temperature alone. It came from moisture. Inside those tall leather boots, feet would sweat during marches. That moisture, trapped inside wool socks, turned into ice the moment a soldier stopped moving. Once frozen, it drained heat faster than bare skin in snow. A soldier's greatest enemy wasn't the cold outside. It was the sweat inside his own boots. Every army in the early 1940s thought their boots were strong enough. Thick leather, nailed soles, and heavy insulation. But all of it was sealed tight. That was the problem. The boots were strong, but they didn't breathe. At night, when soldiers removed them, their socks were damp, and the inside of the boots were slick with moisture. By morning, that dampness froze into a hard shell of ice. The soldier's first step each day was agony, cracked skin, numbness, and after a few days, black frostbite, infection, and evacuation. But some troops didn't suffer. In the forests of Finland, a group of soldiers had already solved this problem years earlier. During the Winter War of 1939–1940, Finland fought the Soviet Union in some of the coldest conditions in recorded military history. Temperatures dropped below -45 degrees Celsius. Yet Finnish troops, wearing simple wool uniforms and traditional boots, remained mobile. Their secret was simple but revolutionary. They used removable wool liners inside their boots. Each boot had two parts: an outer shell, made of leather or canvas, tough and weather-resistant, and an inner liner, made of dense felt or reindeer hair, which trapped warmth and absorbed sweat. The brilliance was in what came next. The liner could be removed, dried by the fire, or even tucked inside the soldier's jacket while he slept. That one detail, removable insulation, changed everything. Finnish soldiers carried 2 or 3 pairs of liners, one worn, one drying, and one kept as a spare. Each evening, they swapped them out like clockwork. When the Red Army captured Finnish gear, their engineers took notice. They reverse-engineered the design and began producing their own version, called the Valenki boots, heavy felt footwear for Siberian units. Suddenly, a soldier could stay dry and warm for weeks without losing circulation or feeling in his feet. This method didn't require technology, only discipline, and the understanding that dry feet meant survival. The German army soon learned about this boot liner concept, but they lacked the materials to copy it perfectly. Wool and felt were scarce, so they improvised. In the frozen ruins of Stalingrad, soldiers stuffed their boots with straw, hay, even pages torn from field manuals. They weren't just seeking padding. They were trying to create air gaps, tiny pockets that trapped warmth. Some troops wrapped their feet in rags and changed them twice daily. Others inserted cardboard insoles to prevent frost from creeping up through the soles. crude. But sometimes it worked. It was the same principle. Control the moisture. Protect the heat. Here's why the boot liner trick worked, and why it still does today. When you sweat in freezing temperatures, that moisture robs your body of heat through evaporative cooling. Every drop that evaporates pulls energy away from your skin. The boot liner interrupts that process. It acts as a sacrificial layer, absorbing sweat before it can freeze inside the boot. When you remove it, you remove the moisture. Felt and wool are also hydrophobic. They repel water while trapping tiny pockets of air that act as insulation. Even when wet, they keep about 80% of their warmth. Leather can't do that. Rubber can't do that. But natural fibers can. This wasn't luxury gear. It was physics applied in the simplest possible way. Finnish ski troops went even further. They discovered that lining the inside of the felt insert with a thin layer of dried moss or straw improved airflow and sweat absorption. That organic padding kept feet dry longer and could be replaced daily with fresh material gathered from the forest. Soldiers also learned to keep a small square of dry wool inside their boot liner, a tiny sponge to replace when soaked. Others slept with liners inside their tunics, using body heat to dry them overnight. What seemed like trivial habits, removing liners, shaking out ice, airing them out, often meant the difference between walking and being carried. After the war, American engineers studied winter warfare extensively. They learned from both the Finnish and Soviet systems, and by the Korean War in the 1950s, they developed a masterpiece, the Mickey Mouse boots. These were massive white boots with an outer rubber shell and removable insulated liners. They trapped air between two waterproof layers and included a valve to equalize pressure during high-altitude flights. Inside, a removable felt liner acted exactly like the World War II trick, keeping soldiers' feet warm even at -60 degrees Celsius. What started as a Finnish field hack became an international standard for cold weather gear. The lesson still matters today. Modern hikers, explorers, and survivalists follow the same principle. Layer, dry, rotate. If you trap moisture against your skin, you lose heat. If you create layers that breathe and can be dried, you survive. To replicate the World War II system, all you need is a thin, moisture-wicking sock next to your skin, a thick wool sock for insulation, a removable felt or wool liner inside the boot, and the discipline to change and dry them daily. Even in an emergency, wrapping your feet in dry paper, grass, or cloth can create that vital air layer, the difference between frostbite and survival. What made the boot liner trick special wasn't just the material. It was the mindset. Soldiers learned to respect the environment, not fight it blindly. They understood that technology can fail, but knowledge doesn't freeze. In the harshest winters humanity ever fought through, this small piece of ingenuity turned ordinary boots into life-saving equipment. It's a forgotten science of practicality, born in hardship, refined in war, and still undefeated by time. When you study it today, you realize it wasn't a trick at all. It was an understanding of nature and of human endurance. The Finnish soldiers who pioneered this system didn't have fancy uniforms, modern heaters, or technical fabrics. What they had was experience. Centuries of surviving northern winters with nothing but wool, leather, and knowledge passed down from their ancestors. They applied that same logic to warfare. And it worked. The boot liner trick didn't just keep feet warm. It kept armies moving. It allowed patrols to cross frozen rivers, man outposts in the Arctic, and outlast enemies whose strength froze before their courage did. The lesson? Survival doesn't always come from invention. Sometimes it comes from observation. So the next time you read about the grand battles of World War II, the tanks, the aircraft, the artillery, remember this. Some victories weren't decided by firepower or strategy, but by warm feet. The bootliner trick stands as one of the simplest yet most effective survival lessons ever recorded, a testament to human adaptability and the quiet genius of soldiers who refused to surrender to the cold. Because those who mastered the cold walked out alive, and those who didn't never walked out at all. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of ingenuity interesting, consider subscribing for more forgotten history. See you next time.